defining that section of the Constitution to justify the proposed bill?
The two filters I would have, and they sort of go hand in hand, is the constitutional filter. Is this piece of legislation, is there backing in there? Is there support in the Constitution for a piece of legislation? And my second filter always will be, will this piece of legislation increase the size of government? We have gotten so far away from what our founders envisioned. They've used this general welfare clause in the Constitution to approve, over the course of the last 100 years, virtually so many pieces of domestic legislation. When you look at so many of the New Deal programs, and you look at so many of the Great Society programs, the reason that most of these congressmen use to justify programs like that is to promote the general welfare. That's not anywhere in the Constitution. Why? And look, we're seeing the same thing coming right down the pike right now. Forcing people, forcing Americans to get health insurance. Why? The general welfare clause in the Constitution. Making people get health care reform. They're doing the same thing now. When you look at the Constitution, guys, and many of us have, that general welfare clause in the Constitution is very clear what it spells out. Yes, Congress can advance the general welfare of the population, but it is according to enumerated rights, and they're all spelled out right after that. We have gotten so far away from that, and that's why our federal government has gotten so big, and that's why so many of these things should be put back into the states.
I think the fundamental filters we should be using when it comes to our government goes back to the basic principles of the role and the size of government. The Constitution clearly articulates what our federal government is supposed to be doing. And somewhere along the way, I'd say around the early 1900s, we became activists with the Constitution, and both parties have exploited it. We need to apply that filter once again, and we need to get back to small government principles. And we need to get back and make sure that our government is responsible for the behaviors it's doing. If it's not in the Constitution, if it's not guaranteed in the powers of the Constitution, it belongs to the rights of the individual, and it is the responsibility of your representative to ensure that what they vote on and what they propose reflects that very document.
I agree with that. I believe our Constitution is a static document. It is not open to interpretation. I think that it is fundamental, obviously, to the way our government is set up, to being a representative government, and we absolutely need to get back to what it was intended for. In all the years that this government has been in process, we have only amended the Constitution 27 times. That's incredible. We need to appreciate what it was done, what it was made for, and stick to it.
Constitution, as my colleagues have said, is the law of the land. There are far too many. I speak too softly, I'm sorry. The Constitution is the law of the land, and far too many of the people currently want to take it apart. This is not a smart move. We need the filter so that if there's a law, you can't add little stuff on the bottom like they're doing now, like they've done in the health care bill. There's more stuff in there than health care. Leave the Constitution alone.
I believe that we need people in Washington who are going to follow this document, the Constitution. Who are going to follow this document instead of making decisions for their own self-interest. The law of the land. The law of the land is going to be our guide when we are representing, my guide when we're representing you in Congress. Washington right now is in the middle of a power grab. We must limit government. We must limit them trying to expand what they're trying to get accomplished through interpretations, wrong interpretations of this Constitution. Guys, I have right here H.R. 3962. 1990 pages. 1990 pages. One of the filters that I will use when I go to Washington is this. Are the bills that are coming before me going to make people less dependent on government or more dependent on government?
When our forefathers set up the Constitution, they had, for the federal government side, they had 4 key things that they were supposed to do. Rule of law, monetary system, defense, and infrastructure. The reason we have so many bad laws is because of money. Think about it. Our income tax all goes up to the federal government. And then we put people in Congress, and what's their #1 objective? To get the money back to the states. If we just changed that one little thing, where we kept the money in the states, and we only sent the federal government what they needed, that would change a lot of bad laws.
You have 30 seconds.
Whether a piece of legislation makes us less or more dependent upon government is important. But the question I'm going to ask myself when I'm in Congress is the question Ron Paul asks himself often. Where's the constitutional support for this piece of legislation I'm looking at? Where's the constitutional support? And if I can't find it, I'm not going to support it. You know, most people don't realize the Constitution doesn't grant anyone rights. There are enumerated powers and rights in there that are God-given. The Constitution's there to protect us from our government.
We'll start with John Dawson on this question, and it's in the same direction. Will you pledge to push back